Marriage is a vital social institution. The exclusive commitment of two individuals to each other nurtures love and mutual support. It brings stability to our society. For those that choose to marry and for their children, marriage provides an abundance of legal, financial, and social benefits. In return, it imposes weighty legal, financial, and social obligations. My lords, these are not my words, but those of Chief Justice Marshall, delivering the judgment of the Massachusetts Supreme Court in 2003. The case that decided that same-sex marriage should be lawful in the first state in the United States. The words are so powerful that they are often read out at the weddings of opposite and same-sex couples, and I am proud to have read them at the wedding of a close friend. We stood on a beach on the west coast of California, and as the ceremony progressed, it became clear that the tide was racing in. But in the case of this reform, the tide of public opinion is moving in only one direction. In 2003, when that case was decided, there was only 50% public support in Massachusetts for same-sex marriage. In December last year, that number had risen to 83%. And my lords, we all know that opinion poll approval ratings of any issue are very rarely that high. That has been the experience of this reform worldwide. Same-sex marriage is now permitted in 35 countries, covering the population of 1.4 billion people, 17% of the world's people. On January the 1st, Estonia will become the 36th country. Perhaps the arc of the moral universe does, in this case, bend towards justice. Of course, in England and Wales, this reform has now been in place for a decade. I'm very proud to have played a part in that, having set up the Freedom to Marry campaign and voted for the change in the House of Commons. In the 14 years that I was a Member of Parliament, there were very few occasions on which the votes I cast pleased my constituents. Indeed, much of the time, my voting made my constituents furious or unhappy as we sought to tax them or regulate them or restrict their lives in some way. The only effect of this vote, was to create happiness and joy. And the vote did no harm to anyone else. And as the years have gone by, the arguments against the change have fallen away. I don't seek to relitigate those arguments today. And I noted what my noble friend, Baroness Stoll, said about the members of Parliament who voted against the change. Some of them in good conscience, others because they were fearful of the reaction of their constituency activists. Those that were in the last camp, many of them have since expressed their regret and apology, including informal statements in the House of Commons for the decisions they took. They found themselves unwelcome at the weddings of friends or the children of friends. They found themselves facing difficulty in their own conscience about going to those events when they sought to prevent them from taking place. I was very grateful to have been able, thanks to the decision of Tony Blair's government, but with the support of the Conservative front bench, to introduce civil partnerships. It was one of the most important things that I have done in my life. I remember mentioning, I thought only in passing, to my then partner, now husband, that it might be a good idea, since this legislation had been introduced, if we were to consider entering a civil partnership. I forgot, of course, that he was a lawyer, and that evening the forms that one had to fill in to apply for a civil partnership had been complete with the yellow post-it notes where I was required to sign and placed by the bedside table. For a while, I thought that entering into the civil partnership was enough. It conferred, after all the legal rights and entitlements of a marriage. And I came to realize that it was not. And as we advanced the arguments for this change, I saw how important the institution of marriage was. And it is one of the joys of the legislation that it creates the legal fiction that a couple who entered into a civil partnership and then changed that to a marriage are deemed to have been married from the date of their civil partnership. That in itself expresses the importance of the change. In 2018, there were 6,700 same-sex marriages in England and Wales. That's something like 3% of the total number. That might seem a low number, but it's of immense importance to the individuals concerned. And significantly, it's a number that's now 6 or 7 times the number of civil partnerships. As the institution of civil marriage became available to same-sex couples, their choice was not to enter overwhelmingly civil partnerships, but to enter into marriage. That says something about the enduring importance of the institution in the eyes of a section of society. The report notes that in 2019, religious ceremonies accounted for less than 1 in 5 opposite-sex marriages, and that is a sharp decrease from the year before. But it also notes that 0.7% of marriages in that year were to same-sex couples, that is 0.7% that were conducted in a religious institution. There is, of course, a fundamental difference. Religious marriage is in decline by choice, and I regret that, and I have no doubt that most noble lords will regret that too. But the number of same-sex religious marriages is so low, not by choice, but because the individuals are forbidden by our established church from getting married in their institutions. That is a decision of the established church that, while I disagree with, I wholly respect. It seems to me, as my noble friend Baroness Stoll said, that religious freedom is absolutely fundamental and is enshrined in the legislation that introduced same-sex marriage, that it should be a matter for each church denomination to decide what is appropriate for them to do. I note that the United Reformed Church, the Methodist Church of Great Britain and the Church of Scotland have all decided that they will introduce same-sex marriages, and that the Church of England Synod decided narrowly that it would bless same-sex marriages from the 1st of January. I don't underestimate how difficult that debate has been, but I do think that that is an important step in the right direction. The Most Reverend and the Noble Primate said in his speech that families come in all shapes and sizes and that they are not simply nuclear. And of course today that is simply true. But there are devout same-sex couples who want no more than that their marriage should be consecrated in church. My lords, it's refreshing to be debating love when so much of today's news seems to be about hate. And we do see a tale of two worlds. One world, the world I described, where human rights are flourishing and where progress towards important reforms is happening. But we see another world too, another world where human rights are not only not moving forward, but are going backwards. And no more so than in Uganda, which recently became a country to pass what can only be described as the most hateful legislation, discriminating against lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people. Indeed, arguably the most discriminatory and repressive legislation introduced by any democratic country, creating indeed the death penalty for aggravated offences. What is extraordinary is that the Bishop of Uganda said that he was grateful for that anti-homosexuality act. And I congratulate the most reverend and noble prelate who very clearly rebuked the bishop. He called on international bodies that represent conservative churches to make explicitly and publicly clear that the criminalisation of LGBTQ people is something that no Anglican province can support, and that must be stated unequivocally. I appreciate the concerns that leaders of the Anglican Church have about schism. But, my lords, these laws are nothing less than hateful. And I'm afraid it is true that many of them are being driven by religious fundamentalism. Fundamentalism not just in Islam, but also, I am afraid, in some elements of the Christian church. No religious leader would want to feel that they are on the right side of history, but rather, I suggest that they will want to be on the right side of what is becoming an increasingly stark moral divide. As the Prime Minister's Special Envoy on LGBT rights, I have the great privilege of travelling the world, and when I visit countries, the first meetings that I ask to hold are always with the activists, sometimes very brave people in those countries who are campaigning for nothing more than the same rights that we enjoy in our country. In one such meeting a few months ago, I was joined at his own expense by my husband. As is usual in these situations, we went around the room introducing ourselves. And when it came to my husband's turn, he said that he was my husband. And with that, one of the activists burst into tears. Simply because, for him, the idea that somebody could be themselves, could enter into not just a union, but a marriage of his same-sex partner, was so profound, so out of reach for that individual in their country, that it expressed something immensely important to him, so important that it moved him to tears. And marriage is a public statement as well as a private commitment. And that's why the reform of same-sex marriage mattered so much. The commission which set up this report asked, how can we support every family to flourish? What kind of society do we want to live in? And my lords, I think that is the right question. It was one that was answered by another Chief Justice, the Chief Justice of the United States, delivering the judgment of Obergefell in 2015 that said that same-sex marriage was lawful throughout the United States. And my lords, I hope you will forgive me for quoting a very short piece of that judgment at the end of my remarks. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, two people become something greater than once they were. As some of the petitioners in these cases demonstrate, marriage embodies a love that may endure even past death. It would misunderstand these men and women to say they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right.